So I've already disassembled this thing, but I decided to do a video on it anyways, just to show you how to take it apart. I've already tested this unit, I've already cleaned it, everything works perfectly, so I'm going to put it back together. And hopefully this will show you how to disassemble it. First thing I'm going to start with, there's two different kinds of screws. There's long ones and there's short ones. There's only 4 short ones, and they go here. Now the rest of the screws are the long ones. And basically, to take it apart, just obviously do what I'm doing in reverse. First thing you're going to do is put it on its side like this, and undo these 2 connectors. Okay? And when you put it back together, obviously you got to put those 2 connectors on. Don't try to open it any more than this, because those connectors are not going to give. And also, you cannot open it and put this on its side like laying flat. You can only put this perpendicular. This is as far as it will go. Do not try to do it any further than that. Alright guys, we're doing a little bit more of an advanced tutorial on how to... First thing I'm going to be doing is taking up the jog wheel, because it's a mechanical part and it moves and it needs maintenance every once in a while. I'm going to assume that you guys already know how to take it apart. That's the top half, that's the bottom half. If you don't know how to take it apart, either look it up online, or if you still don't know how to do it, then you probably shouldn't be taking apart this serious piece of high-end electronics. Alright, we're going to start removing some of these screws here. I need to remove these 2 so that I can access this screw here. And then once you access the screw there, everything else is easy. Don't lose the screws, because every single screw counts. These Japanese are very exact with their tolerances, and everything has been done for a reason. It's a pretty serious piece of electronics, and it's a marvel of engineering. These you want to take out really easily. Don't yank it too much by the cable. Use your nails and pull it out from the connector, because you might rip the cable, but this one has a lot more cable, so you might be able to rip it a little bit more. But jiggle it from side to side and dig your nail in there to take it out. This one you have to lift up, click, and pull it out. Now this is important. This ribbon cable has to stay up. This one here goes through the hole like that. Okay. Now we start doing the nuts and bolts of the thing. Now we pull up. All the screws are gone. Before we pull it out, we have to take out this knob. That knob has to come out, and then we can pull it out. Boom. Here's your mechanism. If you've had time like me to dick around with these things, you'll realize that this jog wheel is a marvel of engineering. It's very rugged, but at the same time incredibly delicate. What we're going to do here is we're going to take it apart, because as you can see here, I have a little dirt in between the bottom screen and the top faceplate. I don't know if you can catch that. And you have to take the whole thing apart in order to do it, but it's not as complicated as you think. You got these 3 screws. I've been fortunate or unfortunate that I've actually taken the entire thing apart. And it took me a while to figure out what they did here, but it's pretty interesting how they've done it all. In this situation, I'm just going to take apart the two faces so that you can see how to clean it. Maybe in other videos I can do a video on how to take the entire thing apart, but the mechanism is very complicated and very cool. Alright, now this clip has to go forward. You push it in and then you push it forward like that, and then you pull it up and it comes out. Oh, I forgot to unplug this guy. Again, try not to plug up and do it by the cable. Do it by the connector. And with my nails, I just pull it out. You can see that this little connector is a little loose there. I think it's on purpose, but you don't want to mess with it too much, just in case. Okay. This is a retaining washer, a retaining O-ring, whichever way you want to look at it, and it keeps this from coming apart like that. Boom. Put that there. And make sure you don't lose these little things. These little things are what put pressure on the plate. Whenever you increase the tension, this little foot, there's 3 of them, this little foot presses down on this plate, and the more tension you have, the more it presses down. This goes here. This one goes here. Make sure you have the direction of where everything is going. These little edges, as you see here, these little edges are always on the inside of the disc. Okay? Now we got this one here. See the little there's little edges on it? The edges go on the inside. Don't mess that up. Now whenever you increase your tension, whenever you increase your tension, you see that rotating? It's not just rotating, but it's also bringing this white plastic piece is underneath this ring. There's 2 rings, the white ring and the black ring. The white ring, as you rotate this, it rotates as well, and it lifts up the black ring. And these little feet are stationed on the black ring. So whenever you increase your tension, the black ring lifts up and it causes more friction against this plate. Those little white feet rub against here, and as it lifts up, it puts more pressure on these feet. Goes like that, right? So as it lifts up, increases more tension on this, which makes it more tense. As you can see here, from years of use, there's a lot of guck and junk here. We're going to clean all that up. See how they've put lubricating grease here? This is that blue lithium lubricating grease. Really good stuff. Try not to rub that out. You leave that grease alone. That grease is there for a purpose, and it serves a really good purpose. And it's better than the grease you can commercially get here in Mexico anyway. So we leave that alone. This sensor here, before we put it back together, goes here. In order to put it back together, we're going to have to remove the sensor, put this back in, and then put that sensor back in. That sensor sandwiches this plate here, this little plastic plate. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it has a black carbon strip all around the perimeter. And that carbon strip gets sandwiched in the middle of the sensor. This sensor is consisting of 2 parts, this bottom part and this top part. That sensor has to go in the middle of those 2. But in order for you to do that, you have to remove the sensor, put that in, and then put the sensor back in so that it can sandwich. If you can see, that this part here has to be sandwiched in between these two sensors. Has to go in between these two, like that. But we're not there yet. We're gonna clean this up first. But before we clean that up, we need to remove this last part. And this is where the screen is. In order to remove the screen, there's 4 screws. You're gonna notice 1 screw, 2 screws, 3 screws, 4 screws. 3 out of the 4 screws have this rubber O-ring on, right? And the rubber O-ring fits perfectly in the hole. The 4th screw does not have one. So don't trip out like I did the first time I did it and look for the extra O-ring, because there isn't. Only 3 out of the 4 have it. 1. O-ring. O-ring. And O-ring. Now we disassemble the screen from the plate. That's the plate. That's the sensor, one of the sensors. And this is the matching sensor on the screen. And this is the screen. See all that dust that's accumulated on the screen? Not cool. And on the other side as well. Not cool. So we're gonna clean this with rubbing alcohol. And then we're gonna clean this plate as well. And then I'm gonna show you guys how to put it back together. Okay, so we have cleaned the area in between the screen and the top plate. It's immaculate. I used good old rubbing alcohol and tissue paper, but I also rubbed it with cotton so that no fluffs or anything got in between. You got to make sure that there's no fluffies or anything, because once you put it back together, you'll notice little fluffies and whatnot in between, and it'll be a pain in the ass to take it apart again. So now we're going to put it back together. I also cleaned all around here, all around there, on the inside, in here, everywhere. Being careful not to touch that grease, because that grease is there for a reason. And also being careful not to touch the grease in every little, I guess we can call them bearings, because they have grease on each end. Make sure you don't touch that. But clean everything around there. Everything here was covered with gunk, as you can see here. Look at all the junk that was all around there from a couple of years of usage. So now we're going to put it back together, and this is actually not too difficult. Cables go here, and then the last little cable, there should be 3 cables. And now we want to find, there you go, these little nipples here go inside these O-rings. And remember, there's 3 rubber O-rings, and one of them does not have an O-ring. So we'll start with the one with no O-ring. I like to do everything from an engineering standpoint, so instead of just going around in a circle, we're going to do the opposite screw just to, what do you call it? To spread the,
Resistance.
what do you call it?
Resistance.
Yeah, the resistance. Like the way you would do a car tire. You don't just screw everything in a circle. You do opposite ends to spread the load.
That's what she said.
when I was first doing this the first time, there was absolutely no video on the internet or anywhere taking apart 3000s. I guess everybody's afraid of taking these things apart because they cost so bloody much. There was a couple of guys, but they weren't very thorough. So I thought I would be the first guy to do a proper thorough check. I do have an electronics and engineering background, so I like to pretend I know what I'm doing most of the time. Alright, now that this is in, now we have to put it in here and sandwich these together. But before we do that, and I probably should have done this first in retrospect, but I'm going to do it now. Take out the sensor. This sensor has to come out. And it goes up and out. And out. Okay, save the screws. So you can see this sensor, you can see from the side here, has to go in like this. And that plastic has to be sandwiched. And if you don't take out the sensor, when you put this platter on, it's just going to go on like that and cause you all kinds of problems. So you have to take out the sensor, put everything together, and then when you insert the sensor, that's where you push it up to get it out. Because once it goes in like that. And it's a very important part of the puzzle. If you don't do this right, your platter is not going to work. Also, make sure you clean this part. These are all the moving parts. I've cleaned all inside here, everywhere with the Q-tips. Clean everywhere in there. Because if you don't, all that dust is going to get trapped in there once you put it back together, and it'll eventually probably go to your screen. So we want to clean all that stuff up. Now, when we're ready to put this together, take this O-ring out first. This O-ring usually sticks on this platter, but it didn't in this case. There you go. It has a little nipple on the O-ring so that it doesn't turn here. It's like it's actually like a bushing. So make sure when you put it, that little nipple goes inside the hole here. I don't know if you can see the camera, but it has a little nipple there. That has to go in this hole, or else it's not going to work properly. The tolerances here are so tight that you have to really pay attention to detail. Alright, top of the screen is this way, and now we put it through the hole. There you go. Boom. And how do I know it's on right? First of all, because the gravity. And now, yeah, that's a beauty right there. Boom. Beautiful thing. Beautiful thing there. Okay. First thing we're going to do is this thing, so it doesn't fuck off on you again. This is the retaining washer, which will keep the wheel in place. That's the first step. And now we align it to the stopper there, and once it gets to the stopper, boop, it clicks in place. Second thing we're going to do, since we're here already, is we're going to plug that in. Boom. Easy. And then the third thing we're going to do is the very important sensor switch. This is the most important part of the wheel. Without this switch, the CDJ won't know where the wheel is or what you're doing with the wheel. It'll still register that you're touching it, so it'll stop if you're in vinyl mode, but that's about it. Okay, so as you can see, you got to put that in there like that, and then it goes in like this, and then it sandwiches in between the disc. And you put the first screw back in, and the second screw, and now the 3 retaining screws. Make sure you keep your screws in bunches. It's a little tip that I do. So, bunch of 3, bunch of 2, bunch of 8, whatever you're taking, keep them all separate. Don't mix all your screws together. then it's easier to remember when you keep them in bunches. And then the third screw. Voila. Perfectly working, nice and clean jog wheel. Another thing that I like to do, since I already have this taken apart anyways, is just clean and oil this pitch fader. It's a moving part, and it's usually, if you've ever had Technique 1200 turntables, you know that these wear out over time unless you take care of it. I'm sure it's the same thing with CDJ 3000s. So we are going to take this one apart. Off. And this is the pitch fader. I gotta do this all one-handed because my assistant is was a labor dispute and she's on strike, so we need to do what we can here. We can reach a new contract deal at the bargaining table. Alright, this is the pitch fader mechanism. Before you take the fader out, you have to take this little plastic thing out from the other side. Now we clean this little white strip inside if you want to be really thorough. You can see there's a little bit of dust and whatnot on it, but it's very well protected. It's got this rubber protection on it, as well as the felt. It also has felt in here to protect it as well. But so we're gonna clean all that. A little bit of alcohol. I use rubbing alcohol for almost everything for cleaning, unless it's a soft plastic that I know that it's gonna melt with the alcohol. That happens too. So you always have to know what kind of plastic it is, because sometimes you'll use alcohol on plastic and the plastic will start melting. In that case, if you're unsure, start on a little corner of the plastic, and if it melts, then obviously stop using it, but if it doesn't melt, then keep going. That's what I use. And now I've cleaned the top, and I've also cleaned the inside strip here. Nice and clean. I've cleaned all around the plastic, everywhere. You want to clean everywhere, basically, because all that stuff will just end up finding its way into the electronics or into the mechanical parts, which is even worse. And then it just gets stuck with the oil and all that stuff. So clean all everywhere that you see dust. Is basically, they've done a good job of sealing the electronics from the outside. Look at that junk. But you know, it's not hermetically sealed, and still some dust gets in there, so you want to do your best. Now, to clean the fader, we're going to use the best stuff on earth for cleaning faders. This is deoxide, but this is the fader version, which does not melt any plastics and protects the carbons. Now, to do that, just grab a piece of paper towel here, and we're going to do this. Let's put that at the top. I'm going to try to sneak this in there, in the rubber. That should do it. Looks pretty clean to me. A little bit of, I don't know if you can see it, but a little bit of dust was in there. But aside from that, it's pretty clean. And then we're going to do the top part as well. Just give it one last spraying. Boom. And that should take the rest of the potential junk. But this thing is sealed pretty well. Now, this is basically the oxide, the same formula, but it's safe for faders. So it's made specifically for carbon resistor type faders and potentiometers and whatnot. What I like to do is take some regular deoxide once I'm done doing that, and put it in tissue or a Q-tip and just put some of that around the metal here so that it doesn't corrode. This thing will protect and deoxify, is that a word? The metal. Boom. This stuff, I had to import this from the States, and I couldn't even buy it here locally or bring it in locally because these types of under pressure chemicals are not allowed to be brought in through customs. So I had to get a special shipping service and blah 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 to get it. But I'm really happy I did because we live on a coastal town and a lot of moisture. It's worth its weight in gold. Okay, so now we're gonna put the sucker back together. And it's basically the reverse process. The 4 screws here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you put the cover inside, and 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. I guess you should show that I'm putting this little stopper underneath so that I have room and that the fader doesn't touch the table when I'm screwing it in. Now we are going to oil these buttons. This board, this all comes in one board, and all these buttons are together on the board. These are the buttons that we use the most. Okay, so what I like to do is put a little bit of this inside the actual button, and that will make them not only last longer, but will prevent rust and all kinds of stuff from growing. If you don't know what this stuff is, this stuff's like magic. It doesn't just take out the rust, but it protects it. Really good stuff. I highly recommend it. I've been using it for decades. And this is the same thing as that, but this is for faders. It's basically the same chemical, but it's a special formula made for faders and potentiometers, things with a carbon resistor, if you know what that is. Disconnect that. Try to do it from the top so that you can see the screws. These are the most frequently used buttons. Aside from the play and pause, this is the search buttons. I like to just douse them a little bit in this stuff. Put the excess on the metal electronics because that will also protect them from the rust and corrosion from living so close to the ocean. So any excess, I just rub the solder points, which are usually the weakest. Everything else is covered in the circuit board, but the solder points are exposed to the elements, so just gives you an extra barrier of protection. Plus it also helps to clean the board at the same time. This board's relatively clean, but there's still a little bit of dust and whatnot. You don't want that stuff getting into your buttons. As you can see, it's The Q-tip's a little dirty, so there was some dust on it. So this oil is going to help to reverse any rust or corrosion. I also like to put this stuff on the connectors because these connectors experience friction every time you plug them and unplug them. And if something's going to fail, it's usually something that's exposed, like a connector. So a little bit of deoxit on the connectors definitely helps prevent any of that. And when I lived in Toronto, it was actually great for a great place to live for electronics because it's so dry.
And hermetically sealed.
And you're usually hermetically sealed in your little house. So it's really good for electronics. Cities like that, I'm assuming like Chicago or in places that are more inland. And I mean, we do have moistures from the Great Lakes, but it's not salty like the ocean is, so it doesn't mess up the electronics as much. Alright. This is the card for the play and stop buttons. They're used so frequently, play and cue buttons I should say, they're used so frequently that Pioneer has put them on their own board so that you can just replace this board instead of having to replace this entire assembly. Make sure you count your screws, gentlemen and ladies. 1 and 2. Apparently these buttons are a lot more resistant to wear than the Nexus 2000. The Nexus 2000 was rated for, I believe it was 700,000 pushes, and these ones are rated up to 1,000,000. So they've gone far above and beyond with this. Again, we're going to put a little bit of deoxit on them. And this is preventative maintenance. It's basically what we're doing here. What you guys just heard was a chicken trying to get inside my house. We have chickens here on the ranch. Okay. And any excess, I'll use it to wipe off the board. And like I said, this will help protect any corrosion from getting in the board or the components. It's really miracle stuff, this deoxit stuff. It's not like WD-40 or your regular commercial lubricant. It's a special chemical that basically dissolves rust and leaves a layer of protection behind. Boom. And before I put it back, we're gonna put a little bit of that on the connectors. Boom. Okay. Now we're gonna assemble this together. Actually, before we do that, let's take out these buttons and see what we got. Oh yeah, there's a little bit of residue around the buttons. Let's clean that up. Bust out the trusty rubbing alcohol. I'm sure there's better cleaners and purpose-made cleaners and whatnot to do all this stuff with, but I have been using rubbing alcohol since I was 10 years old for all kinds of cleaning duties, and unless it melts the plastic, it's perfect for dissolving dirt and scum. You can use your favorite lubricant or degreaser or cleaner if you wish, but I typically use rubbing alcohol. It's what I've grown up to use because it was always around the house. Look at that. A little bit of dirt around the circle. If you don't clean that often, after a few years, it will start to build up, and then your button will get stuck. Or even it will just show that it's dirty. And I like to play really good music, but I like to also look good doing it. So I like to make sure that my equipment is always maintained so that it looks good. So I've cleaned all around here. I've cleaned all around here and inside. Now in here, these come off as well. This is the ring that holds it together. I'm going to clean around that. And you can see that there's junk anywhere exposed to the outside elements. And your hands, your sweat, will eventually enter the machine. So we want to do a thorough job. Since we're already doing this, we might as well do a good job. I hate half-ass jobs. Alright, now how does this go in? Like that. Okay, now we take out the other one. Boom. Again, we got a whole ring of stuff all around it. Let's use I'm gonna use a clean Q-tip so that you can see all the gunk that's gonna come out of here. Look at that.
Okay.
I just used a clean Q-tip and look what it did to it. Just to show you that even though you might not be able to see it or notice it because it's too little, there's gunk there. And that builds up. And you can see it from the outside a little bit. You can see outside when you're playing, you can see that there's a little bit of stuff there building up. And I don't like to see that. It's not cool. So now we put this guy back in here. All right. Now it's clean. Now we can put it back together. When you're doing all this work already, you might as well take your time and do a good job. Because once it's put back together, it's put back together, and it's going to be put back together for another 2 years probably. Year and a half, 2 years, until I take it apart and do this again. So do a good job the first time. I put it in the wrong way. There you go. Boom. Now we can put the card back on. Again, just general engineering practices when you're screwing things on. You don't want to start in the corner, you want to start in the middle. So you can spread the tension out. Okay, now the two middle ones are done, then you can start going to the corners. Just a general engineering practice, mechanical practice. Start in the middle onwards. So the tension will spread evenly. Okay. Now, let's put this guy back. Okay. Boom. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's done. Now we're going to do this part. Alright. Screws in here. The rest of these on top. Plug this in now. That's going there. There. This goes in here. This one goes here. Should be all the way in. That's all the way in. Okay, and let's not forget this guy. I always unplug this. Make sure you get that screw underneath. Sometimes people forget because this cable blocks it. That's for the jog wheel. This goes here. Let me put a coat of this stuff on it. There you go. Hold on a second. It's better to do it this way. That way it doesn't leave any fluffies. And it makes it go in a little easier. Okay, so this ribbon cable has to be sandwiched in between this plastic and this plastic here. They've done that on purpose because they want every cable here, especially cables, delicate connectors, to be held in place so the vibrations and whatnot over the years of usage dislodges them. Imagine one of these cables coming loose when you're playing a giant stadium. No bueno. I hate people that say no bueno. No es bueno. That's how you say it properly for all you gringos watching it. Okay, so we plug that in there. Screw that in there. Boom. Now it's beautiful. Pioneer have done a wonderful job with this machine. I've actually taken the whole thing apart, which maybe I'll do another video about that one day, but and I just inspected how they've done things, and it's really smart. You can see why you're paying top dollar for this. Missed that screw there. Okay, so I like to just look at all the sections that I've taken apart to make sure all the screws are in place. All the screws are in place here, and here, and here. So now we're going to move on to the last section. I like what they've done here. They've put this little pillow, this little foam pillow here, to press down on this cable so it doesn't come apart. They're really done there's a lot of little detail that they've paid attention to. So all these little plastic things that I'm screwing on, they're very vital for the longevity of this product. See? That squishes down there and it keeps that cable from rattling. All these things are done for longevity. Most consumer electronics, you'll never see something like this. But because this is a professional item, they've gone out of their way to make sure that all the bases are covered. And this one goes in here, and it goes in like that. Boom. Okay. This one in. Boom. Now it's good. I like to use a magnetic tip screwdriver when I'm doing this. Just makes your life a lot easier. Okay. Just a quick note before I put this thing back together. This is the motherboard here. The CPU is right here. And these are the two connectors that connect the top part, this part here, to the bottom part. This is the power supply. And this is the clean power coming into the motherboard. Like I said, these are the two connectors coming from the motherboard. And to take this apart, it's pretty easy. It's just these screws that take this metal cover out and then lets you see it. On a side note, this is the cooling system. Basically the way it works is it sucks cooling air from here, channels it through a plastic housing, and it spits it out here. A little design note. Even if this was covered in the case, the Pioneer folks have engineered it so that there's this middle part here, from here to here, from here to here, that's the vent. But the Pioneer people have left a little space here and a little space here in case this is covered for the air to come in through here and come out through there. Little side note, there's also the fan here that only turns on when it's hot. You won't hear it unless it's hot. Cool little design. Also, part of the cool design is that this is the motherboard, and they actually, instead of incorporating the audio section, which is these, and this is the digital part of the audio, instead of incorporating what a lot of devices, computer devices, incorporate the audio into the motherboard. What Pioneer has done is they put a daughter board, which is not connected to the CPU, that only handles the audio, which is incredibly smart. If you know anything about high-end audio or amplifiers, you never want to share the same board for the audio, because you're going to get all kinds of interference. I mean, this is for audiophiles. Most computers and whatnot, you won't notice a difference. Most people won't notice. That's why computers have built-in audio. But really high-end computers, or computers made for audio, they have a separate audio card. And this is the case here. The audio card is separate from the CPU, which will give you the best resolution and signal-to-noise ratio and things like that. Also, the components in the audio card are really high-end. They've done an excellent job. They do have a digital audio, but I feel like using the digital audio, you would be missing the high-end digital to analog converters that are built onto this board. Some Pioneer mixers have digital to audio converters on them, which means you can hook up your CDJs digitally to the Pioneer mixer and then let the Pioneer mixer convert from digital to analog. However, the digital to analog converters on this unit are so high-end that you're better off using the RCA outputs, in my opinion. I've also gone ahead and put some deoxit and on the grounding clip here. And now we're going to put it back together. To do that, you take the top part like this. I like to hinge it like that. And while you're holding it like that, you want to put it in there, firm down, and then clip it, and then it won't come off anymore. And then the same thing for the other one. You should already know how to do this since you've taken it apart, but if you're watching this video backwards, so to speak, or watching it to get ready for that's basically it. And then with your finger, you can just snap that. It's nice and snug, and it's nice and hard to snap it on, beware. And then when you put it in, what I like to do is look at it from this side. Boom. And that's it. Line up the screw holes here, and you're golden.